Hello, hello. My name is Robert Bajer, and I'd like to welcome you to the first ever Micro-credential Mondays. I'm going to wait about 30 seconds while folks join us, and I'm going to check in on YouTube and LinkedIn where you guys can comment. Some of the folks here are viewing it on LinkedIn, some of the folks are viewing it here on YouTube. We're going to be streaming this live on the first Monday of every single month. The whole point is just to make this whole space a lot more accessible, to demystify some of the things that kind of make it difficult to get involved with micro-credentials, skills, and learning and employment records, and all the things that are empowering a shift towards a skills-based recognition, hiring, and recognition system. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right into it. Let me just check on. Okay, LinkedIn is live and YouTube is live. All right, very cool. So let's get into it. All right. So this is Micro-credential Mondays. The whole point is to bridge the skills gap one Monday at a time. And I'm proud to present this to you guys from Micro-credential Multiverse. We're a Dallas-based, a US-based strategic advising and consulting firm. We specialize in things like micro-credentials and skills, learning and employment records, learning pathways, and we'll talk a little bit about all of those things in the next half hour. But buckle up because it's going to be a quick ride. The whole point of these things is to just get it out there, to get the conversation going, to make it timely, to make it quick, and to really get to the heart of what your challenges are specifically in adopting the technology and the mindset. I call it the confidence and the competence. So again, I'm Robert Bajer. I'm the founder and CEO of Micro-credential Multiverse. We specialize in things like skills, digital badges, digital wallets, skills descriptors, micro-credentials, and learning pathways. And we're passionate about uniting learning experiences with career opportunities or career outcomes. This is our mission statement. This is our North Star. So everything that we do is in service to that goal. So what is Micro-credential Mondays? Let's start there. So Micro-credential Mondays is a groundbreaking regular webinar series that's designed to demystify the rapidly evolving world of micro-credentials. And you can get more information about Micro-credential Multiverse and Micro-credential Mondays on our website. And you can visit our very convenient domain, which is microcredential.info. If you want info on micro-credentials, go to microcredential.info. You'll also find in the drop down on the top nav bar that we have lots of resources. So we have podcasts and white papers and all sorts of things just to make this whole space more approachable, especially for folks who are just getting started and are in their kind of 0 to 60 phase. Okay, so how can you join? So you can join us on the first Monday of every month in 2024. So February, March, April, May, June, all the months leading all the way up to 2025. We're going to be doing this on the first Monday of every single month. So if you want to connect and join the stream on LinkedIn, you can do that by heading over to our company page. As we queue up new events, you'll see them pop up and you can attend them conveniently from there. The same goes for YouTube. So if you're not really a LinkedIn person and you want to see the stream, you can always head over to YouTube and those things will be, you can attend them. They'll aggregate on our YouTube channel. And what's nice about YouTube is as soon as this is over, it's going to record that and publish it on YouTube. So if you miss us, YouTube is where you're going to want to go. I'm going to also be publishing these things in our newsletter on LinkedIn. We have almost 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to be in the loop there, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter on LinkedIn. It's called Micro-credential Multiverse. You can also head to our website. So lots of resources, lots of entry points for this conversation. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible. All right. So if you're on LinkedIn or if you're on YouTube, this is when you want to drop a comment in the chat. So if there's something that you want to discuss, you want to cover, if you have any burning questions, feel free to add those into the chat there. And I'm going to be just kind of pivoting quickly from our presentation here and checking out that comment section. So if you want to add anything there, feel free to do so. And I will differentiate this conversation for live chat. You guys are my priority. Okay, so first things first, let's get right into it. Food for thought. Did you know that the average person is going to change careers 5 to 7 times during their working life? And I actually fit into this category because I started off as a classroom educator. I was a science teacher at a high school, a technical high school actually in New Jersey. And I had pivoted from a career in science. I have my undergraduate degree in biological sciences, did a bunch of research, pivoted to teaching, then pivoted to project management, and started developing micro-credential ecosystems for professional educators. And then I pivoted again and started building software that go beyond that use case. And you can only imagine, bunch of pivots, about 6 pivots in my career up to this point. But approximately 30% are changing their jobs every year. So new year, new job. And this is one of the big reasons why this shift to skills-based learning, recognition, and recruitment has really started. But to further ground that in the state of affairs currently is 95%, an overwhelming majority of executives say that it's somewhat or very challenging to find employees with the appropriate skills and talents for their open roles. And this is a long standing impasse that's been come to known as the skills gap. So when we say we're tackling this, we're bridging the skills gap one Monday at a time, this is what we're really talking about, is finding a better fit between candidates for particular roles and those open roles themselves. And then thinking about all of the different kinds of learning experiences that contribute to that socioeconomic mobility and those qualifications among learners, both traditional and non-traditional. You'll also notice that at the bottom of any slide where I quote an outside source, I'm going to go ahead and cite that source at the bottom. There's white papers, there's organizations, there are a lot of folks working on this big challenge. So I'm going to pause really quick and make sure the stream is going really well. Looks good to me. I'm actually going to go full screen. I'm going to take me out of the equation. All right, let's keep on keeping on. All right, so let's look at skills. So starting with skills is smart because everyone speaks the language of skills, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's dive into the actual numbers. Again, I'm a former science teacher, so I like inferences, not opinions, and the difference is evidence. So here's some evidence that the state of skills is really evolving. So about 1 in 3 of the top skills requested for the average US job have changed completely since 2016. Not to mention 1 in 5 of those skills are completely new requirements for that particular occupation. Then when you combine that with the fact that 3 in 4, 76% of jobs have changed more between 2019 and 2021, and we've seen the same growth and evolution from 2021 to 2024. So I like these 3 numbers because it shows a velocity and an acceleration. So things are changing, and they're changing faster. I'd also like to take a look at some of the learners. So what are learners doing about this? The ground is kind of changing rapidly beneath their feet. Sometimes this is called the Red Queen challenge, which is the classic Alice in Wonderland story. The Red Queen ran as fast as she could to stay in the same place. So learners themselves are running as fast as they can. So 6 out of 10, most learners are who are working, so employed people, are what we call professional learners in the sense that they've taken a course or received some additional training in the past 12 months to improve their job skills or expertise connected specifically with career advancement. So this is most learners. And about 3 in 4 adults consider themselves lifelong learners. So they're not just doing it this year, they're going to keep doing this for the rest of their career. And finally, about half say their extra training helped them advance within their current company. So I'm also an evidence guy. I like results. So the results speak for themselves. About half of those folks who are pursuing those annual professional certification, development, recertification are seeing tangible career gains as a result of that investment of their time. And I wouldn't dare throw a bunch of numbers at you without summarizing it. So here are some key takeaways. So the first is that the learning landscape is fluid. So adapting to new skills is not really a choice, it's a necessity. Learners, they get this. Traditional education pathways are really struggling to keep up. So as you've seen in the news, I'm sure, is that a lot of folks are dropping sort of traditional requirements for jobs and looking for more precision fit learning experiences that they can trust. So when a learner walks through the door, they're ready on day one. The third is that learners are already adapting. So we talked a little bit about that. Most learners are already kind of making investments into their professional learning and their lifelong learning journey to adapt to these changes. But they're not alone. Employers need that agility too. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot of folks joining us for Micro-credential Mondays, and I'm actually going to be sourcing some folks, employers specifically, to provide their perspective on this shift and what they're doing to adapt. The last little key takeaway here is that economic resilience really should be the goal. So if you get really high level and you kind of get out of the weeds of learners and employers and issuing organizations and this stuff, the whole point of a shift, a national shift to a skills-based system, really is grounded in economic resilience. And we saw that economic model kind of break down during the pandemic as a proof point for why this kind of needs to happen. And I honestly think it maybe should have happened a little bit sooner. So let's take a look at our stream. It looks like we're good. Audio seems like it's good. Let me make sure the audio is coming through correctly. Yes, it is. All right. You can tell I've been doing this for a little while. I'm like double checking and making sure you guys can hear what I'm saying. All right, I'm going to check our comments really quick to see if we had any of those come in. All right, we have some engagement. That's good. Remember, you can always drop your comments either in LinkedIn if you're watching from LinkedIn, or you can drop them in YouTube if you're viewing from YouTube. Okay, so let's go through the basics. All right, so a good friend of mine from the Bean Center, Martin Bean, whom many of you may already know, we worked on what is called a skills continuum. And we use the skills continuum as a jumping off point for conversations about the various technology, cultural, and societal trends that are contributing to this shift. So if you're wondering about micro-credentials, that's usually where people enter the conversation, but there are some other moving parts associated with this shift. And during this conversation, our initial conversation, we're going to narrow the conversation, wow, I just said that word a bunch of times, to these three topics specifically. So during this chat, see how I didn't use the same word? We're going to talk about skills, micro-credentials, and learning pathways. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what I mean. So how do these three things fit together? So first, let's talk about scale. It's always a great place to start. So when we talk about skills, skills really are the foundational stepping stones for micro-credentials and learning pathways. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Micro-credentials sit in the middle. They're generally vehicles for skills and experiences, and generally stack up to and into learning pathways, both traditional and non-traditional. The real goal here is to create an ecosystem, an economy, a skills-based economy where folks can never have to start from scratch and always have an experience that meets them where they're at and helps them get to where they're going. So this is kind of how these three ideas, let's call them right now, fit together. What is a skill? So I'm also going to pause briefly during the chat, and I'm going to define a lot of the words that I'm talking about, because many of the conversations that I've encountered in my over a decade of experience this space really start with defining the terms, making sure that everybody's on the same page. So when we say skill, we mean skills as in basic units that define an economy. Skills are supplied by demonstrated by learners. They're assessed and verified by subject matter experts, people who know what they're talking about, and needed by employers and other recognizers in pursuit of their business goals. So notice there's a little bit of a sneaky supply-demand curve here, but really everyone speaks the language of skills, which is why they're a great place to start. And what do I mean, everyone? I mean, most micro-credential ecosystems consist of three main stakeholders, the first being the learners or the earners of the micro-credentials that include those demonstrations of competence and skill. I also include the issuers, so the folks who are providing those learning experiences, assessing and certifying those demonstrations of skill and competence, and then employers who really embed value into these credentials. So if I gave you $1 and you had nowhere to spend it, then the dollar doesn't have much value. So employers are critical because they are on the demand side of the curve, and they're providing learners with those opportunities based on those verifiable skills and competencies that are shared with them. So let's walk through a quick exercise here. So first, let's start with one skill. This is one of my favorite skills. I'm a project manager by trade, and I use project charters all the time. But one skill isn't necessarily valuable in isolation. It's really groups of skills that qualify candidates for roles at an employment or an academic opportunity. So I might combine a skill like project charter with initial scope and maybe a schedule and create what is called a skills library or a skills taxonomy. So this list of skills I've actually pulled from the Project Management Institute, which makes sense if we're talking about a certification about project management. And skills taxonomies, like, for example, the one published by Lightcast, can be quite big. Some of these skills libraries are tens of thousands of skills, and they're verified and they're curated and they're pulled together for different reasons, fitting different use cases. Institutions have skills taxonomies, labor groups have skills taxonomies, K-12 institutions align their curricula to the next generation science standards or other standards bodies. And when we're talking about skills taxonomies, those recognized portfolios of skill and competence are generally what we're talking about. Another one might be something like ONET, right, which is a pretty large general economy-sized skills taxonomy. And skills are generally linked with context-specific competencies through what we call metadata. So this is where things really start to get exciting. What's the difference between a paper PDF and a micro-credential aligned to something like an open standard, like the Open Badges specification? Well, the key here is metadata. So when I give you that certificate, whether it's digital or in person, you can verify that because the data is baked directly into the certification. Remember what I said, I'm not going to use any words without defining what I mean. So what is metadata? So metadata is the information that's baked directly into a digital badge or a micro-credential, and we'll tease the difference out at a later date. But that metadata is human readable and machine actionable. So I can look at that metadata and see this was awarded by an institution. I can see that it is certifying and assessing very specific skills and competencies aligned to an outside skills taxonomy. Metadata also gives the verifier valuable context on the award. So is it my award? Did I take it from somebody else? Verifying the identity and the authenticity and the validity, whether or not it's still if it's an expired credential, for example. So someone who's verifying that information can get all of that data just in one click. Finally, the metadata helps support the connection between different stakeholders and other types of labor market data. So we're not going to go too far down this rabbit hole, to use another Alice in Wonderland reference, but there's a lot of data that can be baked into these credentials, and they can tell different stakeholders different things about the award, the issuing organization, the skills, et cetera, et cetera. Structured metadata is the key to a scalable national model. In fact, I spend a lot of time reminding folks that we are in the learning business, but we're also in the data business in a big way, specifically data about learners, for learners, owned by the learners and controlled by them. But again, that's maybe a conversation for another day. Let me know in the chat in LinkedIn or in YouTube if this is something that's interesting to you. I want to reiterate that if a question comes up, if we don't have time, I'll cover it at a later date. And again, first Monday of every single month, we're going to be kind of taking this one step further. But let's take our example one step further. So where do micro-credentials fit in? So let's go back to those original set of skills. So if I created, let's say, a non-credit bearing professional certificate that covered these 4 skills specifically, I might call that micro-credential defining project parameters. And within the scope of that course, I will cover and have assessed these 4 specific skills. This may also include a description of the learning experience. If this is challenge-based, project-based, if this is synchronous, asynchronous, again, all of these things can be included in the metadata of the micro-credential and differentiated from credentials that are maybe more or less rigorous, depending on the fit, depending on the persona. Again, these are things that you're going to want to talk about when you're developing your micro-credentialing strategy, and these are things that we do all the time. Now we get to the burning question in the room. This is the question I get more than any other question. What is a micro-credential? So there are 26, not that it's confusing at all. We actually have synthesized these into one definition to rule them all, but depending on where in the world, what use case, a micro-credential might mean something a little different to you, and it might have different requirements as a result of that. But I happen to think that this is probably the best kind of meta definition for what a micro-credential is, and it's a two-parter. First part is that it is a certification of assessed learning that is additional, alternate, complementary to, or a formal component of another formal qualification. So micro-credentials can be stepping stones towards more formal qualifications. The second part of this is that ownership of the micro-credential is exclusive to the earner. They can be shared, are portable, and may be combined into larger credentials or qualifications. So this first part of the definition really deals with the modality. So they're generally shorter, they're rigorous, they are assessed skills and competencies, and they're usually aligned to the needs of industry or some other stakeholder. The second part of that definition deals with kind of the logistics, the technical requirements of a micro-credential that makes it different than just, a PDF that you can hand somebody. The first is that it's portable. So no matter what ecosystem you're awarded the micro-credential from, you can take that with you to whatever platform makes sense for you. Portable, very unlike the current paradigm when it comes to large social media sites. I mean, try to download all your pictures off of Facebook and pull them into another service. It's not exactly easy. And that's because a lot of these platforms are not interoperable. Interoperability makes it possible for one system to recognize the data that may have been awarded to a micro-credential using a different system. The whole point is that these things should talk to each other and make it easy for the learner to do what they need to do, which is, again, connecting those learning experiences with those career opportunities. The last, I would call it, requirement for a good micro-credential is the fact that it's verifiable. So the identity of the learner needs to be able to be verified, the identity of the issuing organization, who said that this person knows, what they're saying they know. And then the third thing is about the award itself. What did it take? What did they do? Is there evidence? Is this aligned to standards? All of those things need to be verified. Notice all those citations at the bottom left. So if you're curious, you can always review this stream. Again, it's going to be up on YouTube. You can see the video afterwards. You can grab all those citations at the bottom and learn more following the stream. Okay, so we have our first pathway. We might take a micro-credential like the one that we've been talking about around defining project parameters, and we can stack that with two other micro-credentials. Micro-credential 2, maybe getting into identifying risks and quality standards, and micro-credential 3, developing an initial project plan. All three of these micro-credentials we could combine into a pathway that we can call project initiation. And if someone wanted to learn how to successfully initiate a project in line with the Project Management Institute's methodology and ideology, they could complete this pathway, and along the way, they'll be generating some evidence and verifiable proof that they've completed this pathway and are qualified for maybe an entry-level project management job. I happen to think that everybody's a project manager, but maybe more discrete project management roles, this would be appropriate as well. So what is a learning pathway? We just used the word. What does it mean? It's a structured and sequenced set of educational experiences designed to enable learners to acquire a set of skills or competencies. Each step in the pathway is intentionally crafted to build upon the previous, so that we're creating some directionality to the learning experience, and it's often validated through some assessment or maybe some other micro-credential that could be connected to the pathway by the same institution or a third party. Remember, these things are interoperable, so folks might be pivoting between different platforms for different learning experiences. Ultimately, the pathway aims to guide the learners from a starting point to a defined outcome, aligning with the specific needs and goals of employers or other recognizers, that's where the value comes from, in a given economic or professional context. So I'm not going to go too far into that, but that's probably the best example. And you're probably seeing a subway map in the background right now. I think about learning pathways, micro-credentials, and skills very much like a subway map. You can get on where it makes sense for you. You can get off where it makes sense for you. Your journey is your own. And the best kinds of micro-credentialing ecosystems give learners a lot of options and are personalized. So sometimes pathways look something like this. So I've built out our project management learning pathway, but actually they usually look something like this. So you might get on for our intro to project management micro-credential, and you might complete the executing a project plan micro-credential, but then decide, hey, I want to work at a software engineering firm. So it makes more sense to implement Agile and follow our little orange boxes here, then continue through and complete the closing a project micro-credential. Alternatively, a learner might complete all three of our blue kind of boxes, micro-credentials, and realize that they want to work for a manufacturing employer. Then it might make sense to do Lean or Six Sigma methodology. So let's take a look at some benefits. So I'm going to fly through these for the sake of time, but for each one of our stakeholders, our learners, there are some very tangible benefits to adopting this model. Micro-credentials are generally more personal, they're shareable, they're digital objects, and they're verifiable. Here are some employer benefits. So if you're facilitating a shift to skills-based hiring, micro-credentials, learning pathways, these things are a great tool. Second is to reduce costs. So micro-credentials validate expertise, and they save employers on both ends time and money on training and verification. And then finally, talent pipeline sustainability. So micro-credentials can create a reliable source of qualified candidates, simplifying the recruitment and fostering long-term partnerships, expanding the pool and narrowing the precision is what I like to say. And then finally, institutions. Institutions are learning experience providers. You can reach new learners with micro-credential experiences, especially non-credit bearing professional certificate style courses. They can generally be more targeted for specific industries and learners who are breaking into those industries, maybe for the first time. And then finally, they're adaptable. So when you start creating micro-credentials, they can be little Lego blocks that you can adapt later on to fit different use cases, new use cases. I spent a lot of time talking about technical skills, but well over half of employers prioritize candidates with superior soft skills. So things like collaboration, leadership, and empathy are also in scope. So this has been a warp speed introduction to micro-credentials, and I want to thank everybody for joining our inaugural stream here for Micro-credential Mondays. Here are some questions I thought up. I was a teacher, so I know the worst question to ask is, does anybody have any questions? So here are some example questions, as well as some key topics. So if you're viewing this stream after the fact on YouTube, feel free to punch those questions in there. Same goes for LinkedIn. These are fertile ground questions for future conversations. So let's recap. Micro-credential is a certification of assessed learning that is additional, alternate, complementary to, or a formal component of a formal qualification. And next steps for you guys are to follow our company page on LinkedIn, visit our website to learn more about Micro-credential Mondays, or to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if you would like to engage with our audience. So that has been amazingly time specific. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here on the inaugural stream here of Micro-credential Mondays. I'm going to check our comments real quick to make sure we didn't get any questions. Looks like we're good. All right, I'm going to pivot back to me. And I just wanted to thank you again. Thank you again for joining the stream. This is a new experiment that we're doing at Micro-credential Multiverse. And we're so glad that you were able to join us today for our inaugural stream. Maya Angelou said, there ain't nothing to it but to do it. And we made it happen. So thank you again. And I look forward to talking to you guys during the next Micro-credential Monday in March on the first Monday. See you there.